Hello, welcome to Drinks and Discussions, the RPG podcast. My name's Wrath. I'll be your dungeon. I'll be one of your hosts today. Alongside me I'm joined by Mr. Pickles. He's the voice actor behind characters like Grunkle from King's Crossing. Also, Morgan. Yeah, Morgan. From Dirty Journey. I was very prepared for this, you can tell. He's also the storyteller and kind of campaign manager for the game called Strange Town Golden Ridge. Entire series can be found on YouTube. Go look for it. Our other co-host today is none other than Adis. He is the voice actor behind characters such as Character. I don't know your characters from the in-person game. Mine's Vendover. But the voice actor behind the character Adarag from King's Crossing. He's also the mastermind behind Dirty Journey. Also on YouTube. It's actually aired right here on this podcast. So if you watch the podcast series on YouTube, you'll find it. I am the voice actor behind characters such as King, otherwise known as Kingsman from Strange Town Golden Ridge. I'm also Solomon from Dirty Journey. So, it's funny that, like, you know, I have Solomon and his specific way of talking and everything, and then it's just King, because he just talks like me. It's not much voice acting. Like,
really
it's
stretching your chords
Solomon.
there.
Yeah. Very creative. But anyways, basically what this is we, a bunch of us, whoever from the community decides to join, sit around and discuss anything related to RPGs. That could be video games, that could be TTRPGs, such as our tabletop role-playing games like King's Crossing, Strange Town Golden Ridge, Dirty Journey. However, today we are diving into a new topic. We just wrapped up, if you guys saw the previous videos, we wrapped up kind of how we DM, how we kind of write our stories, how we come up with the idea, and how we put those to paper. What we wanted to discuss today is we wanted something new. I didn't see a part 3 to that, and Pickles actually came up with a great idea. He wanted to discuss magic items, because I don't know exactly why exactly. But in my mind, exactly. I was thinking a lot of systems do magic items differently. I think that's a core concept of varying factors in each system. If you go from D&D to Warhammer to Savage Worlds, they handle magic items very differently, or at least from the games that I've been in, they have. So I'm curious what my cohort's experience with them is, as well as my own thoughts on them. I run the game called King's Crossing, and I have a lot of thoughts on these. But it was Pickle's idea, so I'm going to throw it off to him to launch us in.
Well, if you guys are familiar with a lot of my games, I actually have a lot of magic items in a sense, but I haven't always been that way. That's been something that I've struggled with a lot. I feel like I brought it up because I still do struggle with it. A magic item, to me, is something that you gain in a game that gives you a definite advantage, and it just is. You have a sword that can set on fire, or it's a +1 sword, or what have you. It has that, and it's just true about it.
I really like those swords, by the way.
What's that?
I really like those swords.
Burning long swords and +1s?
Yeah. The character, remember we brought in a player for a one-time thing and he killed all our characters? That character he killed had 2 swords that could light on fire. They were green fire.
Yep, the Swords of Emerald Flames.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
I like those.
And I just wanted to make that definition, how I see it, clear. You guys might disagree, because there are other things that are magical, like a magical wand that can shoot 25 magic missiles, or a potion of healing that heals your life force. And those I see as different. They can still be magical. It's just, if they're consumable, to me, they're a consumable. They're not a magic item. They're not a ring of giant strength. And so that's the definition I want to set first off. And with that in mind, I think that there's really only 3 types of magic items. Actually, let's say 4 types of magic items. The first is the most common one that I see, and the one that makes me least interested in magic items generally, is sort of the D&D high fantasy approach, where you're going to get a longsword +1 eventually. Like, and that'll be better than your family's longsword that you inherited from your father and he inherited from his father. That sword's garbage. Throw it in the
Classic
trash.
video game.
Trash.
+1 is
Yep.
better.
Yep.
And so therefore you will take that +1 and it's your new sword. And it may have magical effects, but if it's so common that you expect it and it's kind of, well, I guess it just makes it mundane to me.
No,
And
that's
that's why
classic video game logic. Like, man, my father gave me this blessed sword. It was blessed by the gods. He swung it like he loved it. And you go out on your first adventure, and you kill a goblin, and he drops a club that does +1. You're like, oh, that's better.
Yeah, that's better.
It's like,
Better.
what? Yeah, I hear you.
So the flip side of that, though, is then how do you make magic items valuable? Well, you got to limit their availability. If they're so common they're mundane, then you say, okay, I'm going to take one sword and I'm going to shove it in a rock for some reason. Whoever gets it, gets it. You can be the guy with the magic sword. The magic sword. And so that's like the flip side. And the problem with that, I feel, is then it's so rare because it has to be that you find a magic item never. You're just hearing about magic item, and it gets really hard. Do you introduce it and then give your players the power, or do you hype it, give it legend before you give them power?
Yeah, that was my point that I was going to bring up. Like, when do you put that in? Because if you put that in, say, in the first adventure, then they just have that and no more magic items for the rest of their time.
Nowhere to grow.
You wait. Yeah, exactly. There's nowhere to go. And this is something that brings me to my thoughts on with King's Crossing. Because then if you wait and you give it to them later, like, yeah, that's a huge thing to wait for, but then it's like, oh man, there's magic items, and you just, one, won't get to see it for a really long time, and the two, when you do get it, the campaign's ending. So, like, what was the point?
Yeah, you need to have time to enjoy it.
Right, but how much time? Because if you put it too soon, then it's like, okay, I already won. I got my magic item, and now I'm never going to find anything else, so I retire.
Yeah.
You see? Like,
I do.
What do you get that's better than that? Like, you get some gold. Okay, I mean, I could go retire and start a business and make just as much gold as I was adventuring and not lose my life. The pull to be an adventurer is better items, fame, glory. But if it's like, oh, I got that with this magic ring of awesomeness, and then it's like, did it.
That's Dragon Ball Z's problem.
Is it? I didn't watch Dragon Ball Z.
It's got power creep.
Yeah.
Like, every time this enemy is the strongest enemy that's ever been.
This is the enemy of the week.
Yeah.
I feel like that's a big thing that the Marvel Cinematic Universe faces right now too.
Well, superheroes in general, that's a whole topic of its own. Is
Yeah,
like,
they're just like,
I'm like, why aren't you
Thanos,
fighting
the
gang
biggest and
members?
baddest, and then Thanos died, and they're like, another guy.
Right?
And
That's
another
you're at
one.
the top. It's just like, what are you gonna fight next?
Yeah. No,
God.
I hear you.
But there's two more magic items before I throw this directly over into Adisa's plate, because I'm building over to you.
You better be ready.
So the third type I see is the cursed magic item, where you're like, you know what? It's not enough that they're uncommon or that they're cheapened by being mundane. I'm going to make magic items bad, an inherently bad thing that nobody should ever want. Like from basic cursed items to the monkey's paw, where you think you have a good item, but it will never help you. I feel like that's a third category of magic items that we could address if we needed to. But the fourth, and the one I'm thinking could be the best, but I'm not really sure. It's what I've been using a lot myself, is what I'd call the video game method, or storytelling method of, if you're going to give a magic item and you want it to be like important and matter, then the storyline should have moments where it's important and it matters. Like, if you give somebody a magic item, a fiery sword, then there should be moments dotted around where it makes sense that helps them in specific ways for the story.
The one example I can think that comes to mind immediately is in The Hobbit. They find the sword called like Foe Hammer or something, and then they go to the goblin area, and the giant goblin's like, the foe hammer, and like knew that sword and ran away from it, and it was like, oh shit, like.
Huh?
They have something that lights up when goblins are near or something too, or is that the same weapon?
Pretty much most elven swords do that.
Yeah, it was.
Oh,
I think
okay.
the Frodo sword was touched by elven magic, so it lit when orcs were near.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, and that would be an example of something that you get, and that's an effect that comes into play. Like I often
Mhm.
feel disappointed in real video games when it's like you get something that's really good against giants, and you're doing a roguelike, obviously, and then you never find any giants. So you have the perfect weapon if there is an ogre,
Mm.
but it just never comes up. And it always feels really cheap to me when that happens. But
Another, and this doesn't really go in line with that, but my thought was one
go
that
for it.
doesn't always work. And so, for example, and this is a terrible example, but in the newest video game that came out, Spider-Man 2, the new one that just came out,
Not the PS2 one.
not the PS2 one, yep. Another new Spider-Man 2. Spider-Man 2 the second. So this game came out and it very clearly states that he has spidey senses, which means that he has like a sixth sense to alert him when danger is near. However, he is constantly just blindsided, smacked, like it doesn't work. And like he's in all the cutscenes, he's just get fucking ambushed left and right. And the guy that I didn't play it, but the guy that I was watching do a playthrough of it, he goes, "What are you broken?" Like, what? And it'll like it'll show his spidey sense goes off, and then he just gets hit, and it's like, what? The whole point is so you can react. It was
Something
very
bad will happen.
Yeah, I'm gonna just stand in one spot and wait. Like it was very broken, and that's one thing where it's like if you have a special thing that makes you special, and then it just doesn't work, it's like, what the fuck?
But to bridge both of those actually, so like with storytelling and having things that actually function within the narrative, I was really curious for you, Adise.
Mhm.
You know World of Warcraft way better than myself and maybe Wrath.
Mm.
But
Maybe.
I was curious if in MMOs like that, how magic items are treated relative to the ideas I've said, and if there are
In any
instances that
MMO,
actually
that's
work
true. Yeah.
really well.
Yeah, so there's certainly,
Or
I would
makes me want
say,
to go play World of Warcraft.
yeah, there used to be a big, like, there used to be a huge focus on like these are the specific items that you want to go and find and you want to go and get that are going to give you the biggest power jumps, and that's something that, like personally,
Tough nuts mentioned this. Go ahead. I think I know where
Yeah.
this is going.
Yeah, where it was a huge thing of like you knew where you needed to go, what you needed to do to go and get these items, and you could actually go and in through your playthrough, you could go and actually like work up to these big accomplishments.
So that when other people see it, they're like, I know what
It's
that
like
dude went through to
I
get that. That's amazing.
Yeah, he went all the way through the ringer. He was like the top person to do this. He was the first person to do this sort of thing. And since then, now in retail, which is like the current version of like Dragonflight is out right now, where it's like the current stuff. They've lost a lot of that, and it's become very much just like a all right, just do your dailies and weeklies, and eventually you'll work your power level up enough. And it doesn't really matter what items you have on or what the name of the item is. It's more so just that you go and do your weekly quests to go and find out what your next big number crunch is going to be. And it lost a lot of the notoriety that came with some of these items back in classic. Back in vanilla World of Warcraft, if you had Atiesh, which is a staff, everybody knew that you were insanely lucky, and B, a part of a high priority member of a guild that had enough members and enough experience base to be able to go and actually do all the quests and gather things to be able to get this Atiesh staff. Another example is Thunder Fury, Blade of the Windseeker. And these things were like everybody knew what was what these items were. You can remember the names even now. I'm somebody who didn't play vanilla WoW. I played my closest experience was classic WoW, but even I was able to learn these names and knew what they were and knew the significance of them. Nowadays, you lose a lot of that. But taking it back to the original discussion of magic items, when you have something that you can work towards or you know you can go and find eventually, that is a important piece of I think that's an important story driver, like that you could use in a tabletop setting, is if you know that, hey, or you get a prophecy sometime in the beginning of you need to go and collect these components to make this item to be able to go and then defeat the Dark Lord or something like that. I think that something like that would be at least an interesting way of handling a thing. But even then, you start to get into that thing that you brought up, Wrath, which is, well, now you've gotten all these components, now you go defeat the Dark Lord, so you've only now used this actual item for like the last 10 minutes, for the last like 3 sessions of the campaign.
Yeah.
To go and do something.
To that point, that gives me an idea. Like, I'm kind of probing your guys' brains for this because I want to add these kind of items to King's Crossing. I'm trying to figure out the best way to do it. So this is good material. So what comes to mind is talking about that is this is something I would have thought of. Like, say you're hanging out and you guys meet, I don't know, we'll say, for example, this is not going to happen, but you guys meet the Lost Sons, the mercenary group that has like Cassandra, you guys don't know her name, Blackheart. You guys might have knew her name, I don't remember, but you did know her first name?
I believe I got that from her because I talked with her a bit.
You might have, yeah. Because
now I don't know.
She goes by Cassandra, but everyone calls her Blackheart for reasons, but you don't know. Say you guys meet the Lost Sons and you guys are hanging out with them, and they're like, "Oh yeah, it's a rite of passage for the Lost Sons. We all climb to the top of this mountain and retrieve this coin that is in the fountain. Like there's a hot spring at the top of the mountain, and there's some like coins or like a rock, like crystal rock at the bottom of these hot springs. It's a rite of passage for us to go up there and do this. So not everyone does it. It's kind of rare, but it's just kind of an accomplishment thing. And maybe that rock has like, it keeps you warm in like really cold places. It helps keep you warm in cold places. So then you guys would be like, okay, cool. We could go do this little quest, a side quest, to go up to the top, get this thing, and now we have it. Granted, so when you see other people, you're like, oh, you did the Reaper climb. Like, so did I. Like, that's awesome. Like, good for you. Is that kind of similar to what you were saying, Adise? Like, it kind of would show, hey, that person has that rock. They must have done the Reaper climb. Like, that is hard to do. Like, good job.
Yeah, kind of. Some of that stuff came from, like, you knew what the best in slot items were for your class, so you would go and do specific dungeons and fight specific bosses to go and try to get that drop, to go and get that item.
Right. Comparing that to a TTRPG, I don't want it to just be like, hey, adventure after adventure, go to this dungeon, because that doesn't really make sense. Like, you would need something different, but I figure you do something like what I said, it might work.
Yeah, but there are also some things that are like quest items where, yeah, you would go and do this certain quest line and then you get this item. That's also a big part of some of the items that you would get in World of Warcraft. But the thing that your little example there reminded me of is actually a Star Wars thing, in that I believe it was like the original like Jedi like test was something where they would have to go and retrieve their crystal, their kyber crystal, for the lightsaber. And so that, I mean, that makes for an interesting point of like, yeah, doing something like that where like, but then you think about like lightsabers as they're used in the Star Wars lore. They're very powerful items and very powerful weapons, but they're not overpowered, is the thing. So while it is a significant increase to your abilities, it's not something that's going to completely break the system.
Yeah. Well, I'm definitely a fan of like There was actually, it was Grunkle in a previous campaign that went and joined a guild on his own, not with the other players. Joined the guild by himself. I'm totally a fan of that.
Uncle's
So
a good guy.
you could have they weren't good people, but you could have, like, say Adareg and Nimwort are going on their adventure, and then Adareg is like, the Merchants Guild, that seems up my alley. So he goes off to join the Merchants Guild while Nimwort is maybe joins an Engineers Guild or something, we'll just say. And maybe in that Merchant Guild, they're like, hey, yeah, you're just one of the basic guys. You can level up over time, rank up through the structure. And then maybe you... Sorry, my stream just dropped, I think. Are we still here? Did I just lose?
Let us know in chat.
Yeah, are we still live? Yeah, I think we're good. Okay. So say you're in the Merchants Guild and they're like, you're hanging out in the Merchants Guild, and then you see specific people who have a gold cloak. And you're like, what's the gold cloak? And they're like, oh, those are only members who went and did this thing, and they earn that. They're pretty prestigious. And you're like, on it. And you could go get yourself a gold cloak. Now, maybe that gold cloak gives you something. Maybe it's just a status thing to where you wear it out in public and people are like, oh shit, like, you're a gold cloak. That's amazing. Like, just the common public doesn't have access to it, but they're aware of the recognition that it means. And like, that would be, I don't know if that would qualify as a magic item per se. It would just be a prestige item, I suppose. But
yeah.
Like, we'll go back to my original example. Say in your guild, you join a fighters guild, and they're like, hey, we climb to the top of this mountain and retrieve the heart stone of the mountain, and it, we wear it around our neck, and it keeps us warm in cold places, or it vibrates when demons are near or something. Then you could be like, oh, I could go get that and do this quest and retrieve this magic item. Now, granted, I feel like that would be not low level magic item, but like, that wouldn't be like the sword in the stone kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like what Pickles was saying.
Yeah.
It sounds like you could almost say, if you were to just generalize everything, it sounds like a token of merit.
It does sound like a token of merit.
That's what I was thinking this entire time, like a prestige item that has some sort of mild magical element, or at least a important narrative element, kind of working in. And it could almost be considered a cursed magic item if it's been used commonly to spy on people, rather than just a status thing. You could say, I have prestige, but I'm being spied on while I have my prestige out. Keep your prestige in public.
Keep your prestige in your pants.
Says you.
Yes, that is what I say. But
Pickles and I had this conversation recently. This is a D&D or RPG podcast. We don't need to talk about sex, but some of us like to keep our prestige out.
Yeah, that's, I guess, what we talked about.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. Yeah, Adis was saying I don't have any. I guess prestige items and magic items are very different things, but
I
both are
going to disagree here.
Worth commenting on.
A prestige item that gives you a permanent actual bonus of some kind is a magic item, right? If it gives you like a +1 versus all nobility in town for persuasion checks, how's that different from a cloak of persuasion versus nobles +1?
I agree with what you're saying. I hear you, but I feel like it takes away the value of a magic item. I feel like the things that went in to create a magic item are a lot more than just this guild they produced a gold cloak. Like, if there's true. Like the heart of a dragon that has been seeped in the bowels of hell in a gold cloak, it's like, one of those is definitely like magic and one of those is prestige. And granted, I think both have value.
That's fair.
But I don't know. I do see what you're saying though. Like a cloak of +1 in persuasion and a gold cloak that gives you prestige talking to people. I can see it, but I definitely feel like there should be a divide of magic item and prestige item. So that way, if somebody shows up with a magic item, I feel like it should be more rare or more like, holy shit. Like a prestige item is like here, and I feel like a magic item would be here.
You said holy shit. And I think that's a critical thing of what is the actual difference between something that works and something that's magic. Magic shouldn't do what it does. A longsword +1, in a
But it
sense,
do.
does more
It's
damage
like,
than a
what?
normal longsword. Like it breaks the laws of a longsword does D8, but this longsword does D8 +1. And I think that's like the critical thing with magic items is it breaks what should be because of the magic. It's a cloak that allows you to go invisible, not through like necessarily science or anything, or because it reflects light. It's an invisible cloak. So I think if you had a cloak of +1 nobility persuasion, it could be anything. You could have it be an ugly cloak, and somehow it just works. They look at you, and it's always like a pitiful, I need to help this person.
It's just like a little baby's sweatshirt, just like tied around your neck.
or that's how they
Why the
see
hell
it,
are you
and that's
wearing
why it
that?
does it.
Why the hell are you
As
wearing
opposed
that?
to-
Let me in. Okay. How did he do that?
You could have the same +1 though. One person goes in with their golden cloak of I've worked my way up through the guild, and then their comrade, who's a creepy wizard from out of town, is like,
Me too.
I have my creepy baby coat. And you're like, that's not a coat, that's a cape kind of, because you tied the whatever. And
Yeah.
you both go into the same situation.
It's just like a
I
baby's
feel like
blanket, and you do the thing that kids do where they tie the blanket around their neck, and all of a sudden it's like a cape.
I'm a superhero.
Yeah.
But I guess as a storyteller, you could approach that from two different angles: prestige versus a magical influence.
Yeah.
And that would lead to two different stories.
True. Yeah, so there's different, especially if someone, say, we'll take Adarag and Nimwort again, for example. Say Adarag's going the route of merchant, earning the prestige, whereas Nimwort accidentally invents a magic item, accidentally warps one through the void. Now, Adarag shows up and he's like, look what I earned. And Nimword's like, look what I earned. And they're like, huh, we both earned.
Oh.
So there's different ways you can go about it, but you can bring about similar, or, depending, it could be totally different. No, this is giving me ideas. I like this. Your other point was the cursed items, and you said you weren't a fan of these, but I kind of, what if you had, we'll say Grunkle, for instance, has a,
let's curse Grunkle.
Let's go, he has a giant sword. It's like one of those anime
Buster sword.
Way too
Cloud
big
from
to
Final Fantasy.
Yeah, way too big to wield. And Grunkle's just like carrying it, and it's like on his hip, and it's dragging on the ground as he walks. This is just massive. And it's just like a freaking wall, right?
Okay. Yeah.
And
I like where this is going.
we'll say
I'm seeing no
no downside. We're gonna say he can, I don't know, he can hurl this and it spins and can just
that doesn't make sense.
We'll say you can hurl it and it spins and kill people, and or you can throw it overhead or something and it can like a spear and just stab into someone, right?
Sure.
And then it phases out and appears back in your hand.
Oh, jeez.
But it has
built myself better.
But it has a thirst to kill, and so once a day it needs to feed.
Blood drinker.
Cursed, but amazing item.
Yeah, that's blood drinker.
Actually, that would kind of,
in essence,
that would kind of fit Grunkle, because Grunkle has the same affliction.
Grunkle doesn't eat that many people.
So, cursed item, but still pretty awesome.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's a well-written idea.
Thanks.
And it's one of those ones where, as a player, personally as a player, I really struggle with things that have timers like that, especially video games that have timers. And so that's one of those things that would give me anxiety, and you would need to reassure me as the storyteller that as long as I'm out doing your stories, that I would reasonably have a chance, and that there might be one or two moral situations where it's like, do I piss off my sword or do I betray the lost sons? I think it would be reasonable to still have those situations, but I guess, yeah, you'd need to trust your storyteller a lot for a cursed item like that. And I don't know. Like I initially said cursed items like oh, you've been cursed with this ring that won't come off. It doesn't do anything but won't come off too. Like I guess the timer is always involved with the worst curses, but um I said the monkey's paw of just wishes that go wrong, obviously, but I don't
Mhm.
know. With cursed, it just feels like anything that's meant to deter you from actually using magic items, where it's like, yeah, that's great, but also I don't know if I should get addicted to this archery heroine.
Right. It's, I mean, to me, they're like, if it's so powerful, there has to be like
Uh, there has
catch.
to be downsides.
Yeah, like, you can be, we'll say, you can be Iron Man, but your heart runs on a battery. Like, you
Great
can
example.
be, yeah, you can be the
Hulk,
Hulk, but you're on a fuse. Um,
Black Widow.
has a tainted past and a history that mars her from being able to do anything.
Oh, I thought it's that she had no powers.
Well, yeah, that
Well,
too.
I don't know if I watched that movie correctly.
um, but basically, I feel like if it's that powerful, it has to come with something to where it's a balance of. Actually, a great example, maybe where I get all this from, is Suikoden 4, a game that I love and
Oh,
no one else enjoys.
oh, good example.
You have a
Good
rune
example.
that can do devastating power, but every time you
Yep.
use it, it consumes some of your life force. So it's like, I mean, great example, but like you can't use it back to back to back because you'll kill yourself. So if I use it and I wipe out this army, and then another army shows up, and I'm like, good luck, like, or do I use it and sacrifice myself?
It's a gamble mechanic there.
Yeah, I think that's
Or,
what
well,
I
not a gamble.
enjoy about Magic. I
So you enjoyed that in Suikoden 4.
loved it. It's a balance of, do I have the health to use this, or do I need to use something else? And like it brought in like tactics. It's not just D&D. I use cleave. I use cleave. I use cleave. I use cleave because it's my best
Your power
attack.
attack next.
Okay, well, whatever.
And then another
Obviously,
cleave.
I don't know. D&D, whatever my best attack is, I just keep using that over, and it's just I press X, I press X, I press X, I press X. It's like I gotta have some tactics because I can't just keep using this because it's costing me something. So that's another thing that I love about Magic. In like, I always do this in my systems where you have a source. Like if you pull too much on the veil, bad things can happen. So we'll take Shifty for example. He plays the character Wilfur Bellalor, who has magic. If he pulls too, granted his magic's pretty low level, so it doesn't use much on the veil. But say he casts some giant spell, it could pull on the veil, make the veil thin, and something else could come through the veil, and all of a sudden you guys are face to face with the fucking Balrog. Like, I'm just like there's a cost to it that's like I can't just keep using magic because my mana goes down, right?
Mhm.
So it's like I have
Yeah,
a
that
sword and I
makes
can attack one person, and all of a sudden the wizard just blows up 4 people with a fireball, and you're like, wow, what? Why am I even here? But then the wizard's like, that's it. It held. That was my one. Now it's up to you. And it like that gives the balance.
Mhm.
I
Yes.
guess that's interesting you bring that up because those are mechanics I usually avoid as a player in video games. I know in South Park, Stick of Truth, there's a character class that relies on taking negative penalties, like poisoned or grossed out or bleeding or whatever. And that's the one I didn't play until last. Like the last time I picked it up is like I haven't played this character class before. I'll play it, see what it's like, and it is fun when you figure out the mechanics of a gamble class like that, where you take on penalties, hoping that you'll stack your benefits enough that you can just quickly deal with a problem, expend as few resources as possible. There will be some loss, but going forward. And so I don't know. It's the opposite of how I play when I go with Magic. I'm a very conservative style caster in all the Magic games I play in on Inwell's channel. Like I avoid using my Magic points unless I need to.
That's
I reserve
perfectly
everything else.
reasonable. You have very powerful magic, but you conserve it because you know you only have a limited amount. Whereas the sword guy can just keep swinging.
Yeah,
um, so it gives their
actually,
balance.
if I can make a point really quick, something I found out about the Mithras system. Um, so I normally play a caster, and I've seen other casters who can actually do damage. I play a priest, but so you have a limited number of spells that you can cast to do damage because you have a limited number of magic points, and that's the only thing I saw. And I'd heard there was an archer player, but it's like, oh, it takes 3 actions to load your bow again. And I thought, oh, that sucks. 3 turns where you're just like loading, 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 shoot, miss. Loading, 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 hit. Um, but I played a rogue character in the same system recently for the classic fantasy that came out, and I had a sling. Took 3 turns to load. But what I found is I have infinite ammo. It takes me a while to load, but I'm never running out of magic points. I literally could just pick up rocks off the floor of this cave and go, whoa, whoa, wow. And so the magic user was complaining to me that, oh, I don't have enough magic points to be able to do this, but I don't know. That's just a tangent of infinite ammo when you don't have to use magic sometimes, but harder to sneak a bow into a building, people not knowing.
True.
Mhm.
I don't know, like Pickles has danced around the idea of doing a game where we're all wizards or casters, this way. And I've thought about that again and again because I was never a caster player. I just like magic's not for me. But I found that recently I feel like I'm kind of drawn a little bit more and more towards it. Maybe it's just because I keep playing the same things and I want to diversify, da da da. But also one of my ideas that I came up with was a curse wizard, where like I curse myself with stinking protruding boils of disgustingness, and then I dive into the enemies, and while my buddies are all trying to fight, now I've dove into the middle of the enemies, cursed with these boils that are popping and getting on enemies, and they're all sitting there puking, and now my allies can just come through and clean them up because none of them can fight anymore because they're all sitting there puking their guts out.
So a warlock.
Maybe I don't know.
I mean,
speaking
that's
from
not too
the
far off.
speaking from the like World of Warcraft region,
is that similar?
warlock is known as like a curse. Like they function off of damage over time effects and like curses, and that's how like their main source of like damage.
Yeah,
Along
like,
with having like a demon pet, but
I've just never
also
seen anyone play that, and I was like, that would be a really cool kind of wizard to where like you are different. Yeah, I enjoy the uniqueness in my games, and so having someone who I don't know, maybe instead of I walk in and I use charm and I work my way in and everyone lets me through, I curse myself with disgusting looks and everyone gets the fuck out of my way because they're terrified.
That's an idea where there are
Completely
debuffers, but there's never really been. I think you're onto something. There's never really been a common I debuff myself and everybody around me. Like another one that pops into my mind that would be less disgusting and less like Warhammer's Cult of Nurgle, I think,
Nurgle.
the disease god, where that would be prominent. If you just walked in and you cast a spell that you just can't help but laugh hideously, like you could blame it on somebody named Tasha and call it hideous laughter.
Right, yeah.
But just like causing that, you inflict yourself as a character, but then everybody around you, they come in to swing at you and then they just start laughing.
Yeah, everyone who tries to hit me is just busting up laughing, and then my allies come in after me and they see the entire room of guards are just busting up laughing and they're able to walk right through.
And they get their bow out,
Sure,
and
just
they
kill
load
all
it,
these people.
and their third action.
Yeah, take their third action as these people are just laughing. I don't know. That was my
Yakety
idea.
Sax is playing.
Yep. That was my idea if I played a wizard, my next character. But going back to cursed items, that's where when you say no curses, I've been tinkering with these ideas and I was like, I feel like it could work.
it can work once, I think. In a not like a narrative. If you keep doing cursed magic items, then your players aren't going to trust magic items. And if that's your goal, that's your goal. But I imagine you want your players to finally get a good magic item and be like, I trust this. You don't want them to see the sword and the stone and saying, no, no, a fairy put it there for a reason. I'm not pulling it out of whatever butthole stone giant that boulder is part of.
Now, say your trusted fire spirit is broken, you're running around with no weapons, you see a sword in the stone, and you're like, pretty sure this sword could decapitate enemies without even trying. Yeah, it might whisper things in my head, but it's a super sword.
You mentioned that, the whispering part. That reminded me, RimWorld has something like this with these advanced technological swords that get a random number of things. Sometimes it's like completely terrible, sometimes it's good. It's an overall good weapon to have for melee, but some of it will be like whispers thoughts that make you bitter all the time, so minus mood, and some of them that like will give more accuracy or will be upset if you don't kill people in a number of days. The blood drinker one, I'm pretty sure I've seen, which I usually pass up on, but yeah, I don't know. Like, it's good for a story within a campaign to have something that kind of fucks you over, but otherwise, like, I feel with a magic item, if you put on a magic ring because you think it'll help you and it turns out to not, that should be like to the point of normally magic items that are rings help you, and this was a surprise. Um,
I've got 2 points I want to make.
Yeah, go for it.
If anyone else wants to talk, let me know.
Oh, go for it.
You guys are all right? All right. I was going to write them down so I don't forget, but so first, I feel there's a difference between cursed magic items and just cursed items. Cursed magic items, I think, would be like, hopefully it's where they balance each other out. Like, yeah, this is cursed, but the reward is worth it. Like, granted, if I got a ring that, I don't know, shriveled up my entire hand and I couldn't use my primary fighting hand anymore, but it allowed me to freaking breathe oil. Like, if I ever am in oil, I can breathe. I'd be like, this sucks.
Yeah, that's not great.
Right, but if I got it shriveled up my main hand, but it allows me to grow wings and fly whenever I want. Like, okay, I'm gonna start training with my left hand. Like, just as an example. Like, yeah, kind of sucks, but or it's something I can take off and now my hand's fine. But if I can't fight anymore, but I have wings and I can travel. So it's like a reward that's maybe worth it. So I think cursed items would be different. Like, cursed item would be like, wow, I got this really cool breastplate. I put it on. This really cool breastplate isn't that cool. Now you're cursed and you have to figure out a way to get rid of it. Now, once you get rid of it, you'd be like, I will never put it back on. It's not worth it. Perfectly reasonable. Maybe it makes you, I don't know, have no air in your lungs all the time. You're like constantly struggling for breath. And you're like, yeah, it gives me +1. Sure, it gives me +1 defense, but it's not worth it. Yeah, +1 asthma. So then, you have a quest to like get rid of it. And it's like, okay, I feel like it, especially I feel like this would work in my system where not everything is always sunshine and rainbows, Some things just suck. So even as adventurers, you could be like, I found a sword in the stone, and shing, okay, it has the thirst for blood and wants to kill things like at least once a day, but I can throw it and, it reappears in my hand whenever I want. Sick. And then you find a breastplate, and it's like, haha, another magic item. This sucks! So, you kind of get it. Maybe that would be a reason to, hey, we found a magic item. Let's take it to a wizard and get this evaluated before we just put it on our bodies. I feel like there's tons that you could do with it. I have a second point to get to, but I'll let you guys respond to that before we do.
Yeah. Pickles, any thoughts?
I'm sorry, I had to step away for a moment. But I think I caught at least 60% of it. I wasn't gone for that long. Yeah, it's a good distinction to have between cursed items that have no value, more or less, that you put them on and you're like, fuck, that was not a great breastplate, as you said. and it's actually just leather armor. What the fuck?
Hmm.
And yeah, then cursed
That would be a
magic
good
items.
one. It looks like golden, priceless armor, and really it's just like a cloth sheet.
Oh no, yeah,
It's
just a
tunic.
pillow sheet.
Like that's the curse. Like it just looks wonderful, but it's not. That's
And it
funny.
actually would help for a deceitful character. It's like,
Yeah.
so I'm wearing light armor.
Yeah, the guards just don't attack. What if you only see it as wonderful, but everyone else
Yeah,
is like,
yeah, that's the
why is
thing,
he
is
just
you
wearing a
only
bag
see
over
it.
his head?
But then that would be an example, as you said, of cursed magic item. Something that is kind of shitty in a way, but has a benefit that if you leverage it. A fighter might not be able to leverage that, but a rogue could be like, yeah, I have deceit up the wazoo.
Yeah, this is
Let's
worse armor than I would normally wear, but it looks a lot better so that people leave me alone so that I won't need armor.
I look more armored than I am, so therefore, yeah, I'm less of a target perhaps. I'm like the one they're gonna wail on at the end.
Yeah, so see, the fighter could find it and be like, what the fuck? And throw it away, and then the rogue's like, I'm gonna take that.
And then the wizard's like, oh shit, I was too slow.
Yeah. So I don't know. I think there's a time and place for all of them. But I agree. I don't think everything should be cursed. And that will bring me to my second point. But Adise, did you have anything to add?
Well, not much to add, but I mean, yeah, I think thinking about it like that, the idea of a cursed magic item, like you said, there needs to be a benefit, and I would say like putting it into percentage wise, or like numbers wise, like if on a scale from 1 to 10, how useful is the item? It has to be a 7 or above, with a 5 or below as your curse. Like, how bad is the curse on the comparative scale? So, if you have an item that really, really like decapitates your movement or really hinders your character in some way, it really has to have that bigger payoff, and you kind of have to start playing with that balance, I think, of what is going to be something that your players are going to want to interact with versus something that your players are going to try to just jerk off and immediately get rid of as soon as possible. Because if you're going to be spending the time to create this magic item with a curse, you want them to still have some draw to it, so it doesn't. So putting a whole bunch of cursed objects and kind of starting to make the player characters scared of using these things, I think you have to be careful about that balance there.
I think this goes back to something Pickles had made a point of if you go through the time and effort to create something, it should serve a purpose in the story, whether it's a quest, a character, whatever. So a good example would be, hey, I really want to introduce this wizard character as a possible context for them. Maybe the wizard character can't be trusted all the time. Maybe it leverages its position to get things from the party, but it's a necessary evil that they like, hey, I know a wizard, he's shady, we got to be smart about it, but he could help us out in this situation. Maybe I want to introduce that. Well, you guys find a cursed item, you apply it, and you're like, we need to get rid of this cursed item. Boom, bam, you go find a wizard.
Mm-hmm.
And so then that introduces that part of the story that we can bring, about, hey, this wizard saved me from a cursed item one time. They're a bit shady, and they're gonna use their power to get what they want from us, but in the end, they will be able to help.
Mm-hmm. And
You're right.
point two.
I really do like the Faustian bargain, or Faustian bargain. I don't know.
Yep.
Yeah, where you make a deal with the devil, so to speak. And wizards are a great example where they're not quite demons, where you're going to be screwed over no matter what. It's like some crazy person who can help you out, and they say they'll take your firstborn son, but you're like, I've had 3 daughters. Just cure my second daughter, you dumbass. You don't say that to the wizard, but you think it.
Yeah. Good.
No. That was more or less my point. Is it's a good entry level magical dealer to interact with. I think you could, if you wanted to have a lot of magic items, a demon or an angel. Well, no, let's talk to demons. A demon would be an interesting character, like all of the magic dealers in town, they're like, oh, I don't know, it could be an armor thing. You're like, no, it's not an armor thing. The next one's like, oh, it could be a critical sight thing, and you're like, that's not a real thing. Shut the fuck up. And like, you might have to go to a demon for that high level. What does it actually mean?
Yeah.
And that could be an interesting plot point. I think identifying a magic item could be a story in of itself, or at least several sessions of a story. What does it actually mean? What does it do? What's the cost?
And that was part of the point I think I made when you were gone, I think, is you could have magic, like, I pull a sword from the stone, it's amazing, it kills things without even trying, I don't know. And then, okay, now I found this breastplate. Oh shit, this breastplate just takes away all my breath and I can't breathe and it's ass. I need to get rid of it. I need to go find someone who can help me get rid of it. Boom, bam, find wizard. Now you've gotten that. Or, hey, we went through some shit to get rid of that breastplate that you had. We had to go on this whole quest to get rid of the stupid breastplate that you just threw on. Next time we find a magic item, Adarag, don't just put it on your head. So now you guys find another magic item. You're like, okay, before Adarag puts this on his head, let's go get it evaluated. Boom, bam, wizard.
Zabani, help!
Yeah, Zabani. Yeah. So you guys, that's a shout out to King's Crossing for anyone out there. Anyway, it serves a purpose and it, tells the story. Mm-hmm. My second point being, I feel like, and I think Pickles kind of got to this in the beginning, was different types of magic items and stuff that you could bring in. I feel like you should rate these because off the top of my head, I would say like prestige items, magic items, cursed magic items.
Mm-hmm.
But then you've got like, within that you've got like, would, like, say you guys find the magic item of the Paragon of the Dwarves of Bopolfrofna, and like that would be this magic horn of this. But then also say Inebria blesses you with a holy artifact of this. Would those be different, or would those be on the same level? Like, I feel like there should be a rating to these things to where, like, oh, I got a prestige item. Oh, well, I got a magic item. Oh, well, I've got fucking Bahalzamug's beard oil. Like,
I think there is that in D&D, at least 3rd edition, is like the idea of what represents a potential bonus for a +1 weapon, +2, +3, +4, or magic item even. What does a +5 mean? Or what's the equivalent? Because they wouldn't always be like, it's a +5 item, but it gives you 3 wishes per day. That's not accurate. It might give you a wish every month for a +5 item. But it gave you sort of a ranking system. There's masterwork, and then there's +1, +2, 3, 4, 5, so on. And you could use those different like +5 for +5 accuracy, or it could be 2 points for fire burst and then 3 points for accuracy, or some other combination. I think that's a way of measuring at least your magic items. And in your case, you mentioned a goddess. I guess it depends on how powerful the goddess is relative to her cleric that is being channeled through, compared to the other magic items that are maybe already crafted by a powerful wizard.
So this brings me another thought, like the +1, +2. So in King's Crossing, the thing I'm doing is, say Grunkle has a sword of +0. Then he gets a sword of +1. It's just a better made sword. So you could take your sword of +0, go get it tuned, otherwise sharpened, refined at a blacksmith, and it would become a sword of +1. If you take an item and you make it mastercraft, it could be +3 or whatever. Or you go to a better blacksmith and then make a mastercraft one, then you can get a better sword. I wouldn't do, in my own game, I wouldn't do a magic item that's sword +1. I just feel like that's a better made sword. And that way you can kind of give distinction. The stable hand at the stables carved you a spear. You have a spear. You go to a blacksmith who forges you a spear. Now you have a spear +2. It's just a better made
plus
spear.
10%.
What?
Since you're using D100 over a D20.
Sure, right. So, or maybe it's +1 damage, or or whatever the case may be. I don't know.
We'd have to dive into this.
Whereas if you get, we'll say, a magic item, you get a spear of paralyzation. You hit someone with a spear and they're like, that limb paralyzes.
Fuck yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
that would be, and then you could go get that spear sharpened. Now you have a spear of +1 that paralyzes. You know, if you treat your weapons well, and maybe over time, you know, Grunkle has a spear of +3 that he got from the blacksmith. However, he's been using it for a month, not taking care of it. Now it's a spear +1. Sword +1, or whatever I just said. So it deteriorated in quality. So now Grunkle's like, we need to get back to town so I can sharpen my sword because it's not doing as good.
I mean, example of this would be Adarag and Nimwort, with Adarag having the shepherd sling that he could use, but then he brought it to Nimwort, and Nimwort made it into a slingshot. Better accuracy, but a better chance to hit, sort of thing.
Yep. So you had just a regular sling, and then you took it to someone, they engineered it into a better weapon, so now it's slingshot +1.
So if I can sum it up for you then, Wrath, you would like for improvements and magic to be part of the community that you're building. Is that people should be able to leverage things as a town that you're building up to become better, right?
In how do you mean?
I mean, that I guess this is just me off the cuff saying, it seems you have a strong emphasis in King's Crossing of building up this town, developing who the people are, why they matter, what they can bring to the table. And I guess with what I'm hearing is that, yeah, you could sharpen up your blade with somebody who knows how to do that. You could do these things and leverage these opportunities. And my guess as a player and a person offhand would be that that's where you would get magic within your campaign. By improving the community? By leveraging your connections, the people you help, and the people can open up and tell you more things.
Possibly.
Oh, you don't want to tell me, I know.
No, King's Crossing is a little different. King's Crossing I treat as very much an open world game.
Yeah.
You guys you are not restricted to only Arwen's Rest.
Sure.
You as a party could be like, let's leave. I've told you about a couple outlying towns. Let's go there. You guys can leave. I mean, if you guys let Arwen's Rest crumble away into nothingness as, you know, sink into the swamp as you know it is, then it sinks into the swamp and you guys will hear, you know, you'll be like, oh, there's refugees coming from a town that apparently has been swallowed up by the swamp. It's gone.
But Suikoden 4 suggests to me otherwise, that maybe your inspirations are different.
For those who are curious, I really like that game.
I think we've mentioned it a couple times already.
No one else liked that game, but I liked it. Kind of. I don't know. I don't like railroading, and I've gone the path of you guys can help build up this town. And I think the last time I did that, you guys attacked your own father and did everything you could to escape.
That was not Grunkle.
Yeah.
Grunkle was there, but he was like, he did a Macaulay Culkin, like Home Alone, like shocked face of,
I think the dad was like, hey, I'm going to need you guys to step up and like help out. And they were like, fuck
she
you,
shoved
Dad.
him over
yeah.
like into the water, like
And
over
then-
a railing. It was like, oh, that was like the leader of our town. You know that, right?
Yeah, and then just ran away. And I was like, okay, that was the entire campaign. So,
Grunkle confused.
yeah, so I don't really do that anymore. I treat this very much as an open world game to where, no, I will provide opportunity wherever you guys go. If you guys decide not to stay on Arwen's Rest, granted, the first adventure kind of revolves around Arwen's Rest. So if you guys abandon this and just move on, it'll just count as, okay, this adventure was abandoned. You know, mark that one off and we'll move on to the next adventure. You guys are not required to finish out an adventure. If you choose to, there will be rewards. If you quit, you won't get the rewards for it, obviously. But you will be free to move on to wherever you want. It's just like if I go into a dungeon to slay something, and I'm like, I did the first level of this dungeon. It sucks, I'm leaving. Do I get the reward at the end of the dungeon? No. Do I live and go elsewhere? Sure.
Sure.
Yep.
So it's very different in that I'm trying to keep it very open world because I want it to be an open world game. Whereas in something like, we'll say, Strange Town Golden Ridge, there's a story, there's a reason to it. We have, there's a
We're on
purpose
the
to the
strange
campaign.
train.
Right. I mean, not so much in that it's railroaded because we do have free will and options in what we do, but there's a purpose. It's just like if we took Dirty Journey and we just took our stagecoach and went off-roading, like, why would we do that?
Mm-hmm.
Well, but there's also me being like, I see blue light. That's got to mean something.
Right, we
Yep.
can interact with things, but if we just were like, hey, we're supposed to go from here to there, let's just drive off into the sunset and we just turn and ride off into the woods, that wouldn't be right. Like, we all
No.
basically assume that wouldn't be right.
What I meant was, Mr. D6 over there made a big effort to mention this blue light. Like, I don't know if we failed our perception checks even, but it felt like it was intentional. Something of interest to dally with. And there's the option there. I consider it a false option because why would you choose otherwise? Do you want to investigate or move on?
Yep.
And like that's one of those things where I don't know. Maybe we've derailed too far, but
Yeah, this
I feel
isn't
like
magic
there are.
items, but I still don't understand your point.
I guess I'm trying to trail back to see how I got into this. I don't know. I see it as there are things that you should do in a campaign. Like, reasonably speaking, if there's a quest and it's the quest in the town, you should do it as a player. And like the option within your campaign of, do we build up this town or do we just fuck off to whatever? It's kind of like, no, anybody who joins this should be of the mentality, let's build up this goddamn town. Sorry for the swearing. But
We built this city.
Shout
we
out to
built
the
this city
first
on rock and
outing
roll.
of Korvekik and Grunkle, where at two different points, both of them were just like, I quit, I'm leaving.
Well, I mean, there you have to have dramatic tension of like, do I really want to do this? And Fred and I work pretty well off of each other. And I feel like there's moments where it's like, yeah, my character wouldn't be entirely certain on this town,
No, that's perfectly
but we
fine.
each bring each other back, and that's been a really great moment for me in the campaign. Is like working with somebody who will bring me back, and when they are like doing that drifty moment, it's like, no, we have to do the job paid for.
So to bring this full circle, you could get the rewarding sword, but you're gonna have to go through some shit to get it. Like, hey, I've got this sword now that does these amazing things, but it wants me to kill at least one thing a day.
Well, I'll get to that road.
we could get the treasure at the bottom of this dungeon, but we're gonna have to go through this fucking dungeon.
Mm-hmm. Hey, you could get this beard oil, but you're now going to have to worship the dwarf god.
Yeah.
Ooh, that sounds like win-win.
Like, hey, you could take your carriage and just drive off into the sunset, but but if you want to get the reward and get paid and do a good job, you need to go down the road that is in front of you.
Yeah. Well, and I guess I don't know. Whenever I see options from a storyteller, it's like I want to explore what they leave out there. Like, oh yeah, there's a blue light along the road, and that's where I was going with that. But I mean, yeah,
right, but magic items.
Magic items. There's magic items in that goddamn
There
tower.
is. There's a blue light that I'm talking to and trying to force feed a handful of drink to.
It's going to give us a magic item.
So, right, but this isn't about King's Crossing or Dirty Journey or Strange Hand Golden Ridge. This is about magic items. And so, with magic items, I'm thinking... That's why I'm talking about rating magic items. Because if you just get a magic item that has no catches, no strings attached, no nothing, like, that is amazing.
Dope.
So, shouldn't that be top tier, hard to get?
Yeah, and I think that would probably
mundane
be
magic items, cursed magic items. no strings attached, amazing, like God-given gift.
Yeah, and I think that's the key point. Is it's like something where you have like done something for a god or something like that, and now it's a boon bestowed upon you by a god. Now, that being said, the cursed magic items could be something bestowed upon you by a demon or something like that, where you made a deal with the devil, you get this super awesome item, but there's a couple strings attached.
Yeah. And that's where I
So,
think like you'd have prestige items, mundane magic items, which could just be like the Holy Grail, you know, like it's seen as, you know, it's a magic item, but it's not like it's not top tier mundane magic item. And then you have the cursed magic items, which could be more common than a no strings attached, perfectly blessed magic item, because they're able to make more of them because they can add curses and stuff to them. There's a reason to make more of them. Whereas we'll say, you know, the God-given sword of Almanite, he gives that to a specific person, and now that is a magic item in the world. He didn't just give it to 100 people. He gives it to that one person, and now it's a magic item. Whereas the cursed sword of Beelzebub, he wanted to curse a bunch of people, so he made 100 of them. He was like, I get something out of it. So I'm going to curse them so that I get my due. Like maybe everyone who wields it, when they die, their soul goes to him, or he gets to command their dead body or something. So now he's got 100 people that he gets to command because he made them. Whereas Super God up there made one item to bless that guy for that thing. So then cursed items would be more common, but not as amazing because they have strings attached. Whereas the mundane items would be more common because they're not something that has to be bestowed by like a super powerful deity. It's more things that occurred because of occurrences. Could be, you know, something that came through a portal. It could be things that came about because of blasted magic. You know, it could be whatever the circumstances arose throughout the ages have made magic items happen. And then
I
you
like
have
that.
prestige items, which would be more common because you have the gold cloaks. There could be 1,000 gold cloaks, but it's still prestigious to earn that title of gold cloak. But it's not super sword blessed by super dude.
Yeah.
I really like that. Like that entire premise of gods will give out good magic items, probably. But there's so many demons out there giving out magic items, calling themselves gods, that you don't really know. It's almost a gamble. The 1 in 1,000 chance that this thing actually is a god. That's interesting right there. That's a clever little storyline or setting even. Magic items are common, but they all fucking suck except for that one that the person had to sell because they're going to get evicted.
Right. I mean, it could be whatever. It could be, you know, you find a ring attached to a dead man's arm protruding from a dungeon. You're like, that's a nice ring. You put it on, and it is just a ring of dark vision. You can see better in the dark. You're like, oh, sick. Kind of nice. Kind of useful to have. Then you're going through and you find, I don't know, a crown hanging from a tendril. Well, I cut off the tendril. Oh, I'm going to wear that. And it's like, oh, this fucking makes you see all the dead things around you. And they whisper to you. And, like, you know, you're like, I don't like this.
Yeah, that's not that bad vibes. Bad
right.
vibes right there.
But, you know, maybe it does something good too. Like you can cast fireballs now or something. I don't know. And then, you know, you get to the end and there's a sword and a stone. And you're like, well, fuck. This one was mundane. This one was cursed. Shing! Just blessed light of all things amazing. And it blows away the cursed item. And you're like, oh, this thing fucks up curses. That's cool.
That would be cool.
A super bestowed sword of no strings attachedness.
Oh my god, a curse breaker in a world filled with cursed magic items? That's a storyline right
fucking
there.
Magic item.
That's a campaign. That's a campaign where it's like, father once bore this blade, but he died. Now I'm just a nerdy piece of shit. And I have the blade of breaking curses. It's like, god damn it, kid. Dude, you need to be good, like your dad was.
Pickles said he couldn't do voices.
Well, I can't. I just do Grunkle, and I do like.
And that kid apparently.
Well, yeah, that. Well, we had him in the studio, but
That was just a recording you just played.
random British kid in the studio.
Yeah, of course.
um, but yeah, um, yeah. I feel like we have to do an end cap of some kind with what did we learn about magic items today?
So I guess that's my premise is, I know this isn't about King's Crossing, but I told you guys I was
Go
thinking
for
about
it.
King's Crossing and how I wanted to implement things like this. So that's the general idea that I've had for a while is you have prestigious items, you have mundane magic items, you have cursed magic items, and you have, we'll call them holy magic items. I don't know. They don't need to be specifically by a god, but maybe, you know, a godlike figure or whatever. You know, you have these blessed items.
Hell yeah.
And we'll call them. So that's the general idea I've thought about going with, and that way that kind of gives you an idea of how common you can make things. Like, you know, the holy sword of holiness would be a very rare sword that would be, you know, you guys are gonna need to do a like campaign to earn that. Whereas, you know, the cursed item of whatever, you could, you know, you do an adventure to earn that. Mundane item, you do a little side quest and you get it. Prestigious item, you did something of merit to earn that.
Mhm.
That kind of gives you a level of, I don't know what the word is, but common, uncommon, rare, you know.
Epic.
Right.
Legend.
I could see prestige almost being something you earn after multiple side quests. Like if you establish that at all turns you are like dedicated to the Merchants Guild, that's when it's like, okay, I think you finally earned your gold cloak.
Yeah, basically.
A number of times where you could have benefited more, but you were like, no, let's turn them in. Instead of taking the stolen goods for ourselves, let's turn them into the Merchants Guild. We won't get the money, but. And they go, okay, we appreciate you being honest this time. You do it a second time, they're like, you are truly dedicated to the guild. The third time, it's like, okay,
All right.
get this boy a
Get this man a gold
Yep.
cloak.
Exactly. So that's kind of the idea I have going for King's Crossing. Is that something that you guys agree that that's how you would manage magic items?
I agree that that's a way to do it.
No, I agree that it's a correct way to do it.
Agreed. Yep.
I am just a psychopath, and I'm like, I'm making magic items abstract within my own campaign. And I'm looking at other games and using this bastardized system that we use for our Dirty Journey for other purposes of how can you apply magic items or traits within a
I will
one-shot
say
game.
story-based magic items would be totally different. For example, in a recent game that failed due to players more so than anything, we were in a traveler game, and we had the rings that gave us abilities and vision of little elemental things that helped us out along the ways and stuff. They were given to us, and each one of us had these rings, but it was a story-based like item, and that's different. Like, I think that obviously needs to be implemented. That's not like, oh, wait till the end of the campaign to get your ring. It's like, no, the ring is the campaign.
Yeah. That's a part that needs to be implemented early on. And I called myself early out on this. Is just that I do that myself. Is I make a lot of magic items narratively based. It's important for you to have it. And I think I've mentioned in previous like podcast episodes is you need to have your players help write on that. If it's that important for the story, they need to have input on it. Otherwise, they won't care as much. You'll have good role players out there, and we're not gonna like deny that. It's just it works better if it's important for the story that the character has a magical sword of some kind that does something. Ask them. You say, do you want it to be fiery? And they're like, actually, I really love icy. I want to make an ice character from like the Arctic. They traveled down here. They have their ice sword. You could be like, okay, well, it doesn't really matter that much. So yes, ice sword. A fiery sword might be like, I don't really vibe with this as a character that I've built. And so I feel like that interaction is important for narrative, the fourth type of magic items in my scale. Like, you got to have dialogue there. And I think with a lot of these too, you have to have dialogue with your players of what to expect, what to understand. I said with cursed items, you need to have some level of trust that your DM isn't just going to dick you over. Like if you gave Grunkle a cursed item that's like you can never wield weapons again until you get rid of it. It's like, wow. Oh shit, what else do I have as a character? I've got my folklore actually. That helps, but yeah,
I mean,
like
I
breaking
could see it,
yeah.
like turning things into a positive. Grunkle gets a ring that shrivels up in his hand. He can't wield a weapon. Wow, that really sucks. We need to figure out how to get rid of this ring. Let's make it our primary quest. We're going to go figure out who can get rid of this ring. In the meantime, Grunkle's running up, headbutting people, biting people, smacking them with his offhand, like just belly flopping onto people. Like, there's options. You turn things into a
Yeah.
positive. Granted,
Mateo, no.
am I going to make you go through an entire campaign like that? No. Would I expect you guys to make it a primary focus to go find a wizard who can break this curse?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, no, that's the thing, is I trust you.
Right, yeah, I
And
guess I'm not a shitty DM who hates my
yeah,
players,
you're
so
not
there's
you're
that.
not in question here, as I trust you to respond to feedback at least, or at least have a plan of like, yeah, this is the story episode where you lose your trademark weapon, but that's the story, and so we'll be revolving around that. And it's like, okay, I can work with that as a player.
Mhm.
It involves trust, and there's times I've read online where people don't have that trust. They do something, they get cursed, and it's like that really kind of screws over my character. I'm a wizard, and I have intelligence 6 now. Yeah, and it's like that's a shitty curse. And the GM's just like, well, you have to figure a way around it
Hmm.
with no like trust or clues or anything. I feel like that's where it can go wrong. I feel like
Yeah,
I've derailed again, but
I think it's just the best way to handle it. Like, obviously, because it'd be like, are there options? And it'd be like, well, you guys picked up some clues. What did you guys pick up? And it'd be like, oh, well, we heard about a crazy man in a tower, and I was like, maybe that's something. You're like, yeah, it says that his place has never been cursed. Oh, well, maybe that's something, and then Pickles would be like, oh, yeah, we should go there.
well, and sorry, not Grunkle. Pickles is just drunk that entire time, so he's like,
I don't know.
Grunkle not no understand thing.
Yeah. Dibs was telling you about, but then you told him to shut up, so.
Shut the fuck up, Dibs.
So then Dibs had to go tell someone else because you needed this clue to get rid of Grunkle's curse, but Grunkle wouldn't listen to him.
Yeah, well, Grunkle doesn't understand curses, but
I'll just throw stuff out there.
yeah.
So random thought. Okay, last wrap up thoughts. My last wrap up thought is: what if you had, I don't know, a ring you put on your finger and you could go invisible as long as you could hold your breath. So any moment in time you could go and just turn invisible. But it only lasts until you and then you're visible again.
I don't think I'd have any personal uses in my daily life for that. And
I mean,
Grunkle
TTRPG,
doesn't.
but that's a good thought too. Like when real
Grunkle doesn't have that ring, and the narrator in Strange Town of Golden Ridge does have something better than that, I guess. So
okay. So if
it's
you
very
found
limited.
if you found a ring like that, you would pawn it.
No, I wouldn't pawn it. I'd just be like, what the fuck? I don't know how to use this, but I'm not letting it fall into bad hands.
So you just hold
I'm
on
gonna
to it.
eat
You just
it.
have it. Oh, okay. What about you?
Man, that. I mean, I you'd really have to think about how and when you can use that.
I think that would qualify as a mundane magic item.
I believe
That's
that
a
would
great
be a
magic
mundane.
item, actually. That's so limited in use. It's kind of hilariously interesting.
Yeah, like it's a magic item that could be
very
useful, but rarely be useful at all.
Yeah, well, perverts would love it, but
But how? I mean, what, you sneak into someone's room? And then you're caught. Like, couldn't get out of the room. They shut the door. Can't hold my breath for longer than like 2 minutes.
Well, if you had an oxygen tank on your back and like breathing tubes in like they have in the hospital.
Wouldn't that be loud?
I don't know.
And that's not holding your breath, so you would become visible just standing there with an oxygen tank on.
But you could extend it further. Like you're inhaling oxygen longer. Like you could hyperventilate yourself and then like you breathe low You
Become
enter into the
visible.
room. You go invisible, and then you're just like slowly inhaling.
Oh,
At
so
what
you would
point
be
do you
like
go
timing
visible?
it, like visible, or invisible yourself, get behind the curtain, visible, invisible, move behind the bed, visible, invisible,
Well, you
like
could time it, I guess,
time it.
depending on is
Yeah,
it when you inhale is when you become visible, or is when you exhale?
both.
Okay, well then you could like
You'd be visible until you're holding your breath, and then you're invisible.
I guess you could use an oxygen tank like to get pure oxygen into
Okay.
your lungs as
You'd
much as
be
possible.
breathing in it, so you'd be visible when you're breathing.
You
into
breathe it in. Okay, you'd be doing your hyperventilating stunts. You breathe it in, and then you hold your breath with the maximum oxygen in. You go into the 7-Eleven. You have your gun already. You go into the snack aisle. You grab all of the Mounds bars, all of them. You put them into your coat.
So you're saying
All of
use the
them.
oxygen tank to extend it, how much air is in your lungs, so you can hold your breath a little bit longer.
Yes, as you got all the Mounds bars, you grab the peach rings. You're getting greedy. You're getting greedy. You put those in your pockets as well, and you try to make your way around. And then you breathe at the last second, and they see you like a glimpse going out of the 7-Eleven. But you got all of the Mounds bars and all of the peach rings.
So, what do you think? Magic
Fantastic.
item. You get a
I'm
magic
ready.
item that has a ring that makes you invisible when you're holding your breath.
And I'll take the peach rings and the Mounds bars.
One, I would take it just because I currently have 0 magic items, so that's an advantage I would definitely take.
It's better than one. It's better than none. Yep.
The only thing I could think, like, I don't work at a job where this would happen, but say I'm working at, like the pizza place. I worked at a pizza place, worst job I've ever had. No offense, Pickles. It was the worst job I've ever had. But I'm at the pizza place and my boss is coming around the corner. I'm like, oh. And then he just can't see me. I'm like, where's Wrath? As he walks past, I'm like, bitch.
Yeah, I could see that.
Yeah, like I could find reasons to use it, just like in the daily life. You're sneaking through a castle. You're fine. You're doing your thing. Guard comes around the corner, and you're invisible. And you don't have to like try and hide or like anything.
Oh yeah, that'd be great for a rogue.
Right?
Yeah, it would turn almost into like a stealth playthrough of Dishonored. If you've played that game.
I haven't.
That was we talked about Dishonored on this podcast, actually.
Yeah.
So that was my random thought before we close. Any closing thoughts from you two?
I have none. Dees, would you like any spotlight moment of final thoughts? Do you want to talk about that whiskey you've been drinking? It looks very delicious.
Oh yes.
This once a month whiskey sips with the Dees really is becoming back to every week with the Dees. That does look good.
I'm curious.
So this is Angel's Envy finished rye.
Ooh.
It's a 95% mash bill of rye, and it's finished in. Let's see, is it going to focus?
Yeah, what's it finished in?
Anyways, it's
Your
finished
mom!
in Caribbean rum cast.
Oh, rum cast.
Yes. Yeah. So
I know you guys are moving on, but I'm gonna laugh at my own joke. Continue.
Please do. So rye is traditionally known as being a kind of like a spicy sort of thing, with more like baking spice notes like cinnamons and other sorts, and like a bit of allspice in there, maybe some nutmeg. But the Caribbean rum cast brings a unique like sweetness back into it with this Angel's Envy, which I really like. It is definitely one of my favorite whiskeys. It's I always love the ryes for the baking spice like flavor notes to it, but this one also brings in a little bit of like a coconut and a banana sweetness on the tail end of the palate. So
You don't get that from like a straight rum.
Yeah, so it brings that in. It hits you with all like the same notes of like baking spices right off the bat that you would expect out of a rye, but then as it matures over the course of the taste, it develops from that sharp spice note into like a more longer lasting sweet tropical note that kind of tapers off.
Oh shit!
I kind of want to try this one.
Yeah, that's one. Angel's Envy.
Yeah,
Angel's
I'm the
Envy,
angel.
I have to try that
finished
I'm
dry.
envy.
So I will say, to continue the discussion on drinks, I went to my aunt's for Thanksgiving down in Louisiana, and she has made friends with her neighbors. Her neighbors turn out to be, we'll just say, fucking wealthy. Like,
Millionaires.
yeah,
Mhm.
the kind where it's like they have more than they know what to do with. So they built themselves a custom Italian villa. Full, like, long driveway going up to it, fully private, full custom built Italian villa, like gaudy, like insane, like statues in the driveway kind of thing, right? I'm rolling up there, and you guys know me, I'm a fucking heathen, so I was like, I don't belong here. Like, they used to kill people like me for walking into places like this. But we went in, nicest people I've met in my fucking life. So anyone who says money doesn't buy you happiness, fuck you, because these people are happy as shit. And like, nicest people I've ever met, like, absolutely wonderful. The guy had a very similar, he was like, yeah, I've been homeless too. We were like, older guy, you know, grandpa age, and we were talking, he's like, oh yeah, I've been homeless too. I was in a, you know, trailer coach, da da da. We were just shooting the shit together. It was just crazy that, like, I had things that I could relate with someone like this. It was wild.
Mhm.
The point I'm getting to is he had a full bar of just every whiskey. Now, granted, they had other stuff there, but I'm talking like, I looked, it was a whiskey bar. This guy was a whiskey connoisseur, and I'm sitting there like, ah! And I walk in, and I was like, you know, I'm building a whiskey bar. Now, granted, mine's about this big, gifted to me by Tough Nuts, thank you.
Yeah.
His is like a room, right? So I'm like, I'm also building a whiskey bar, but granted, mine is, you know, maybe like 1% of this. What recommendations would you have? He's like, oh, pulls out, try this, try this, try this. And I was like, this is amazing.
Shots.
And my aunt's husband, new husband, leans over and he goes, that's like $1,000 shot. The thing I'm drinking out of a glass. For me to just go get, I was like, what the fuck? Like, so I will say, I can't remember all of them, but some of the ones that
Blanton's, yep.
yeah, Blanton's, super expensive collector's edition. They have, like, each lid has a horse on it, and it has a different letter of Blanton, so you can collect
And you try to collect them all.
Yeah, and it's worth like a ton of money.
Oh dear.
This guy was so funny. He's like, yeah, no one told me about that, so I've just been throwing them out. Now he pulls out of his bellies, he's like got 4 out of the 7 or whatever, and he's like, yeah, I was just throwing them away. I had no idea. Like, he's just throwing away these collector bottles. It's like, because he just didn't know. It was really funny. Blanton's, 1792. Whistle Pig. Whistle Pig, bad by itself, like, too impactful by itself, but if you put it on the rocks, it just threw it out, and it was so great. Like, he was like, I don't like this one, but he'd only ever had it straight, so I had it on the rocks. He's like, I was like, this isn't bad at all, and so he tried it, and he was like, oh no, I like this one now. 1792 Whistle Pig at Blanton's, and there's one other or a couple others I can't remember, but those are 3 that I was like, these are amazing. Now, granted, I'm like, hey, recommendations from my bar. These are like $800 whiskeys. I was like, yeah, maybe not. Maybe don't ask a billionaire for recommendations. But that was my most recent whiskey tasting experience. I thought was pretty funny.
If I might ask, Wrath, this is all a part of like how you like grow as like a whiskey drinker. What was the part that you didn't like about the Whistle Pig that kind of put you off? Or did he let you try it like on its own?
I did. He was telling me he didn't like it straight. I had it on the rocks, and I was like, this is really good. And then he tried mine and was like, yeah, no, this is good. So he was saying not on the rocks. It was just, I don't know I didn't try it. So he was saying it was just, it hit you in the face. He didn't like it. But when you had it on the rocks, I tried it, and it was very, I don't know, the best way I could put it was drawn out. Where like I felt like it was, I don't know, pulled apart. I don't know the way to put this. It makes it make sense, but
it's more of a complex flavor that evolves over the time of the palate.
yeah, it was very much like I didn't feel like I was getting punched in the face. I felt like I was getting a robe.
Arrest.
Yeah. I don't know how to put this to make it make sense.
Aroused.
This is just
Oh my
that's
God.
the way it, instead of getting a punch,
yeah.
you got
It's like egg on your face rolling off. Yeah, no,
Yeah,
man. Nah,
yeah.
bro. I
Uh-huh.
get how it
it was
is.
an
I get how it
egg
is.
on my head rather than a brick on my head.
Yeah, no, bro. That's
Yeah.
that's how
Yeah.
it is, bro.
Hey, both of you. I don't have the wine
Hey, man.
connoisseur palate to be like, oh, it's fruity with a cock of this and a
Oh, no,
touch
man.
of that, and I'm like, it's like I'm getting touched and not punched. I don't know.
Yeah, bro. Like it's like the eggs on your face, but like it's in your mind.
I'm never sharing anything ever again.
Sorry, I didn't mean to bully you.
It's funny that you say that though, actually, because that's where I started. Where it was like I didn't know how to describe like what I was tasting, so I was like, this tastes like something I would be drinking in front of a fire on a cold winter night or something like that, and kind of start to try to put it into like a theme or a setting, as opposed to like I can taste brown sugar and I can taste coconuts and
Yeah. Someone's like, how does it taste? And you're like, tastes like I'm at grandma's. What? What does that even mean?
If I can interject here with potheads who talk about how smoke tastes to them, they'll be like, "Oh man, yeah, no, that's some dirty diaper flavor right there." I'm like, "What the fuck?" Or they'll be like, "Oh yeah, no, that's that plastic pool toy flavor."
This is
It's like
actually.
Yeah, why I don't do
it's
drugs.
that like vibe where it's like, "What the fuck are you talking about?" When people describe things, and I have to jump off. I'm so sorry, guys. I'm just
Pleasure
gonna leave on
always.
dirty diaper and plastic pool toy.
We'll wrap up on that note. Thank you so much for watching another episode of Drinks and Discussions, the RPG podcast, joined today by IDs, Mr. Pickles, and myself. Thank you guys. You can find all these episodes on the YouTube. Go check it out at Daddy Wrath. Yeah.
Daddy Wrath.
Along those, you can find series like Raft. All three of us are in. The new Lord of the Rings Return to Moria featuring Adis and myself. Also games like Strange Town Golden Ridge with Mr. Pickles. I was trying to think of a game that's on the YouTube. Like we have Return to Moria that is specifically us. I was thinking, is there a thing on the YouTube that's specifically us?
To Adis, you're talking?
You. Oh, you can't see where I'm pointing. To Pickles.
Oh, to us. We did Sign of Silence.
Oh, that's not going on YouTube.
We didn't do Sign of Silence.
That wasn't very good. Yeah, we streamed it.
Oh, that was awful.
I think what was on the YouTube? That was just us.
Play it up.
That's not on YouTube either. They're just streamed. They get too weird. They're not good YouTube content.
Oh, that's fair.
I don't know. Strange Town Golden Ridge. That's the one that's important. Go watch that.
Yeah, I get weird.
Yeah. Anyways, that's it from this one. Thank you guys for watching. We will see you in the next video. For everyone who watches these live, we do this on twitch.tv/daddywrath_ because they made me do that. The next episode, tomorrow's Tuesday, we will be doing the Lord of the Rings Return to Moria featuring Adis and Tough Nuts. So that's going on Tuesday. Wednesday, there will be no stream. I will be out of town. Thursday, there will be a late showing. It's going to be a late start to Raft, featuring all of us. So, plenty of us this week. You'll be able to see that. Tune in. We'll see you there. Have a great night. Later.
Cheers.
I love you.